Eye Contact, a Mark Manning Mystery, Book 2. Author, Michael Kraft. Publisher, Open Road Integrated Media, New York. Narrator, Eric Aust. Waiting atop the journal building for the second hand of his watch to point skyward, Nathan Kane rises from the stool and makes a final inspection of the laser apparatus, assuring himself that all is ready. Last Monday, downstairs in Kane's office, Manning saw this contraption through the window and commented that it looked like a gun. He was right, of course, and even though Kane drew the curtains to hide the view that morning, he was confident then, as he is now, that Manning couldn't begin to fathom the true nature and purpose of this device. It is indeed a laser projector, as are the other units to be used in creating the sky show that will spin a dazzling pink triangle in the heavens, a symbol of gay rights hovering over the new stadium as a finale to tonight's opening ceremonies. But this unit alone has special capabilities developed with the reluctant assistance of Buddy, Kane's friend at the Pentagon. This unit alone employs a new laser technology born of devilish theories of electromagnetic physics, understood by only a handful of military specialists. This unit alone is linked to an orbiting communications satellite. This unit alone is linked to vast banks of computer power that will enable it to perform dizzying calculations during the course of the spectacle, and that will enable it to reprogram its linked satellite for a covert purpose. This unit alone has the power to kill. Kane completes his walkabout of the device and laughs aloud at its fearsome, outlandish appearance. It looks like a prop out of some cheap sci-fi flick. In truth, it was cobbled together from various parts of existing hardware, a secret prototype of a sinister weapon that will be used only once. The tractor seat and its array of controls serve no purpose whatever, more easily left intact than removed for purity of function. No marksman, however accomplished, could operate this contraption with sufficient speed and precision. It must be guided by the simultaneous calculations of a hidden computer network, harnessing together innocuous banks of gigabytes and megahertz. Racks and cabinets bulge with electronics at 3 separate locales and a basement in Washington, in Kane's suite of offices, and across town in the laboratory assigned to Dr. Pavo Zarnick at Civic Planetarium. So the Zarnick ruse, the 10th planet, was merely a cover, a diversion, to keep the press busy while the final phase of this project was readied for tonight. But the planet scam was nearly exposed twice, and 2 of Kane's reporters had to die at his own hand. He is convinced that their deaths, though regrettable, will be far overshadowed and quickly forgotten in the wake of the climatic finale to tonight's spectacle. It was ironic that Clifford Nolan titled his expose Requiem for a Small Planet. It was clever, succinct, and ever so slightly smug, qualities that Kane always admired in Nolan's writing. But when Kane saw that headline on his own computer screen while Nolan sat at home drafting the story, he knew that Nolan's phrase, "turning days must end." Visiting Nolan at his apartment that night, Kane laughed with the writer as they discussed Zarnick's preposterous claim. While Nolan typed, he suggested to Kane, "Why don't you play something while I drive the final nails into Zarnick's coffin? A requiem would be fitting. Take your pick. Mozart, Bellows, Verdi." Verdi, thought Kane. Perfect. He removed the CD from its case, scrupulously polished both sides of it with his black silk pocket handkerchief, and dropped it into the machine. Behind Nolan's back, he pressed the play button, his index finger covered by the handkerchief. The solemn opening measures of the music began to fill the room. "Scan to the good part," Nolan told Kane over his shoulder. Kane knew what Nolan meant. He was asking for the dies irae, the day of wrath. With a silk-clad finger, Kane queued up the music, spun up the volume, and pressed play again. And then timed to Verdi's 4 explosive blasts, the crack of doomsday. He fired 4 bullets into Clifford Nolan's back with the rarest of rare Nambu pistols, the one sent to him by a friend he called Buddy. Again, Kane recalls the hospital tent in Korea and Buddy's horrible admission of love. Kane remembers when Buddy sent him the pistol, a token of friendship that made it all too easy for Kane years later to threaten sending it back, to threaten he'd return it so that Buddy might fire it into his own temple. It never came to that, thank God. Buddy proved both his friendship to Kane and his love of country. He knew how to accomplish tonight's spectacle. He was the builder, while Kane was the architect and the client, so to speak. The inspiration behind the whole project was none other than the Christian Family Crusade and its guiding force, Elder Burlington Buckman. So then, knowledge of tonight's plan is shared by only 3 people: Kane, Buddy, and Buckman. Conspiracy is an ugly concept, Kane tells himself, but at times it is necessary, times like these. These are the times when the perversion of homosexuality is broken out of its closet and thrust itself upon society at large. The plague of AIDS might have stopped it, but failed. There's been talk of gay rights for over a generation, and by now it's crept into the national consciousness. It's gone so far, politicians routinely pay lip service to it, and even the Archbishop has begun blathering about inclusion. So much for his friendship. The agenda, clear enough. Homosexuality is to be placed on an equal moral footing with heterosexuality. That's just for starters. Then comes job protection, marriage, and finally that last holdout of decency, the military itself. If the courts don't ram it down our throats, eventually the sway of public opinion will. It must be stopped. The CFC has waged a noble war, but now, just when their efforts have begun to reverse this hideous trend, the homosexual agenda is glorified by a festival that will be watched by the whole world. Politicians can't line up fast enough to add their voices to the din, hoping to curry favor with this powerful minority as the stakes are raised for the next election. They're all here tonight, down at the stadium, raising their voices in a sordid plea for tolerance. My ass. And worst among them, a traitor to his nation who has betrayed every principle of traditional values, is a sitting president of the United States. With a single magnificent gesture, Kane told Buddy, working with the CFC, we can rid our nation of this menace. The president himself and thousands of vocal sympathizers will all be silenced. Nathan, you're mad, replied Buddy, certain Kane was joking, but Kane's threat to return the Nambu pistol proved he was in earnest, and Buddy, for the first time in his life, both helpless and frightened, signed on. He committed untold resources shrouded beneath the tightest levels of national security to construct and install the laser hardware in order to help prevent detection or tracing. However, he insisted that the final phase of Project Zarnick would have to be executed by hand. Nathan Kane was to pull the switch. 2 of them, in fact, an assignment he eagerly accepted. According to plan, tonight at 6 o'clock precisely, he flipped the green switch, which fired up the intricate network of computer power, linking the 3 projectors and running them through a lengthy warm-up cycle of checks and counterchecks. Now, at 9 o'clock precisely, just as the president has finished his speech, Kane is ready to flip the pink switch, which will initiate the sky show, while linking the whole system to laser weaponry that orbits silently overhead in the black void of space. As the spectacle of light progresses, it will gain power, climaxing in an accident of cataclysmic proportions. In a meeting late last night with Elder Buckman, Kane predicted, when the firestorm explodes within the stadium, it will consume the president and everyone on the field. While those in the stands may escape instant annihilation, thousands more will surely perish, trampled in the pandemonium. Now at 9 o'clock precisely, the words of the Dies Irae echo from Nathan Kane's childhood. Day of wrath and day of mourning. See fulfilled the prophet's warning. The next line of the ancient dirge has taken on new meaning and immediacy. Heaven and earth and ashes burning. Now at 9 o'clock precisely, Nathan Kane knows that the moment has arrived to execute the final phase of a plan that has consumed him for nearly a year. Standing atop the Journal Building's tower platform with his thumb poised above a pink switch, he wonders what Buddy is doing right now. What's he thinking at this moment, when his technical expertise is about to change the course of history? And Burlington Buckman, what's going through his mind in this instant when his great crusade will enter its finest hour? Overhead, the sky glows purple with twilight. Below, the city glows orange with the light of countless sodium vapor lamps. But the brightest lights, down there, Kane sees them clearly, emanate from the new stadium, where 100,000 citizens cheer their president. Kane is sure he can hear them through the constant winds that blow past the peak of the tower. These thoughts and perceptions, real and imagined, have coursed through Kane's mind in a mere millisecond. With a decisive snap, his thumb engages the simple mechanism of the switch. With a jolt, the projector powers up and shoots dual beams from its long snout aimed at the other two projection sites. Simultaneously, the other two projectors emit their own beams, forming a miles-wide triangle over the city. The perfectly straight beams of pink laser light look like giant tubes of neon in the sky, a-glisten with the random pacings of dust, insects, a bird here and there. Nathan Kane is awed by its beauty, though he detests what it represents. Be patient, he tells himself. This spectacle is far from over. At 9 o'clock, precisely, the banks of computers in Zarnick's lab suddenly shift to a more active mode. Their hum, which Manning and Farber have ceased to notice, rises in pitch and settles into a steady, irritating whine. "Here we go," says Manning, bracing himself in his chair, not sure what may happen next, expecting the worst, but nothing does happen, and after a minute has passed, he relaxes his grip on the edge of the desk. And then, just in case, he rises from the chair, crosses to the fire cabinet, mounted near the door, and opens it. He tells Farber, "I may not know a lick about computers, but this stuff sounds like it's working too hard. If something overheats, I want to be prepared." He removes the axe and sets it on the floor. The water hose would be of no use for an electrical fire, so he leaves it stowed. Then he lifts an extinguisher from its hook and carries it back to the desk. "Hey," says Farber, pointing to the TV screen. "Check it out." The crowds at the stadium coo as one looking skyward as the lines of the huge pink triangle sparkle in the heavens. A camera cuts to the presidential party, seated on stage. They clap and smile, pointing to the laser display. And then the camera pans a bit of the crowd nearby, and once again, Manning spots Neil seated between Roxanne and Claire. Neil's head is thrown back to gaze at the light show. In his hand, there's a sheaf of folded papers. A collective gasp rises from the spectators, and the camera again aims at the night sky, where the triangle, which at first consisted of lines that stretched all the way from projector to projector, has begun to condense itself as the triangle shrinks to the sides of the stadium itself. It no longer appears merely in outline, but hovers overhead as a solid plane of glimmering, undulating pink light. The computers in the lab whine even louder now, and the clicking of relay switches intensifies to a racket. Farber's glance darts about the room as he reaches for his glass and downs the last of his drink. Manning sits at the desk again, watching the spectacle on television, drumming his fingers on top of the fire extinguisher. At 9 o'clock, precisely at her desk in Nathan Kane's outer offices, Lucille Herring is navigating the deepest recesses of Kane's personal directories when something happens to the computer. A network glitch, perhaps, a momentary flash on the screen. Then she realizes that the computer is responding more slowly to her commands. It seems the whole system is bogged down. That's strange. She wrings her brows. Backing out of Kane's directory, she takes a look at the journal's mainframe, wondering if anything might catch her eye, and it does. The data flashing on her screen reveals sudden, intense activity on many of the journal's phone lines, which are being used to both transmit and receive complex digital signals. There's a heap of numbers being crunched. Very strange. She sits back in her chair, locks both hands behind her head, and stares at the screen, watching the activity of the mainframe as a whole, which is dominated by all this phone stuff. Then a little stream of data prints past, which she can identify as editorial matter. A story being sent to the newsroom. What was that? She hunkers over the keyboard again, intrigued, and tries to trace that errant bit of coding. It was sent to the editorial page, an opinion column? But who sent it? Manning? No, she sees his stories queued up and blinking right where she left them. So she traps the stream of data, stops it, and keyboards a code that will trace its source. And bang, she finds herself right back in Nathan Kane's directories. A hidden subdirectory, editorial buffer, is now exposed. Kane had a story waiting there all along, coded to be sent to the newsroom at this hour. A few keystrokes later, the story slugged Cataclysm appears on her screen. Lucille Herring reads the first couple of sentences, and then stops with a loud gasp. She needs to catch her breath before she can read on. With his fingers still drumming the top of the fire extinguisher, Manny watches the pink triangle as it floats above the stadium. He wonders, with the crowd he sees on television, whether the spectacle has climaxed or if there is more to come. Their question is soon answered as the triangle shrinks tighter and grows brighter, descending slowly through the sky, until it rests not far from the top row of bleachers. The spectators roar their approval. With the transition to this next phase of the laser show, the equipment in Zarnick's lab revs to an even higher pitch. "This is all very nice," Arlen Farber tells Manning, slurring, wagging his empty glass at the monitor. "But if someone isn't careful, they're going to blow a fuse." Manning isn't sure how many drinks Farber has swilled this evening, but they've been sufficient to dull his concern for any impending danger. He actually seems to be enjoying himself now, getting into the spirit of the festival. Manning, however, feels nothing but dread, an uncertain but intense uneasiness. He wishes there were some way to communicate with Neil and tell him to get out of there. The crowd whoops as the triangle brighter still levitates within the wall of the stadium and begins to rotate majestically like an alien mothership George Lucas might dream up. The flags around the perimeter of the stadium glow pink in the light of the spectacle. The banks of computers there in the lab churn all the louder. Farber applauds. The president watches with an awed smile. And then the television coverage switches to the scene of the Christian Family Crusades protest at their North Side Hotel. They've been marching since early afternoon, and the troops are looking weary, though zealously determined. Elder Burlington Buckman has just stepped up to a microphone on a makeshift stage erected on the hotel grounds. His followers cheer wildly as his amplified words echo in the night. He speaks of abomination, of Sodom and Gomorrah, of fire and brimstone. He speaks of the dawning of a new age, a new millennium, freed from the forces of perversion and liberalism. He speaks of the will of Jesus. He speaks of God as a wrathful executioner. Manning has heard enough. He needs to return to his story, writing his impressions of the spectacle as it unfolds. Mentally, he tunes out Buckman's ranting, tunes out Farber's laughter, and begins to type. But then his cellular phone warbles. Breaking his thought mid-sentence, he answers, "Mark Manning." "Thank God. I reached you, Mark. It's Lucille Herring," and her voice wavers with panic. "I don't know where to begin." Reacting to her tone, he says, "Calm down, Lucy. I'm listening. What is it?" "I've discovered that the journal's computer power is linked to other computers somewhere here in the city." "They're here in this room in Zarnick's lab," Manning explains to her. "It has something to do with the laser show, but I don't know how they're connected, and more important, I can't figure out why." "That's what I'm about to tell you. They're connected by phone lines. Simple phone lines. Lots of them. Tons of data are being exchanged at this very moment." "Well, that's the how, but it's the why that's so stunningly evil." Manning doesn't speak. He's not sure he's ready to ask the question or hear the answer. On television, the coverage has switched from Buckman returning to the spectacle at the stadium, where the laser triangle now spins and undulates. The camera catches the moment when one of the points of the triangle veers off course and shears through one of the huge steel flagpoles. With a spray of sparks, it drops outside the stadium and clangs loudly as it hits the cement of the parking lot. The crowd goes silent, then spontaneously yelps its approval. There's a close-up of the president, whose smile is now tainted with weariness. Manning views his face through the crosshairs on the screen, as if targeted in the sights of a weapon. "Good God," Manning says into the phone, ready to confirm his worst fears. He asks, "What'd you find?" "An editorial," Lucy tells him, "scheduled to run tomorrow morning." Her voice trembles with the gravity of the words she is about to read. Kane's column is slugged Cataclysm. It begins, "The nation mourns the death of a president this morning, who died here as a visitor, a leader, a messenger. The special grief of our city is magnified, of course, because the accident that claimed his life has also silenced the still uncounted thousands of our own friends, neighbors, and loved ones. When last night's laser spectacle went awry at 12 minutes past 9, precipitating this cataclysmic disaster history, was rewritten. Manning looks at his watch. It is 8 minutes past 9. Only 4 minutes remain until Nathan Kane's dream of a cleansed nation is made real. As Lucy continues to read the editorial, Manning's eyes are fixed on the television screen, where he sees the whirling triangle no longer pink, but hottest red. Even Arlene Farber, who has been enjoying the show through an alcoholic haze, now looks concerned. The electronics in the lab click and whine even more frenetically. Manning searches through the clutter on the desk and finds his note. "Hold on, Lucy?" he says into his cell phone, "and stay on the line." He sets down the cell phone and unplugs the modem from the desk phone. Lifting the receiver, he dials the number Jim gave him a few minutes ago. Manning waits, heart pounding, as the detective's phone rings. At last he answers. "Jim, this is Manning again. Listen. Alert the feds to get the president out of the stadium. I'll explain later, but it's urgent. Act now or he'll be dead in 3 minutes." Manning hangs up the phone and glances around the lab. Feeling he should do something, Arlene Farber, who has heard Manning's message to Jim, now stands with mouth agape, backing toward the door, quaking at what he has learned. His foot bumps the fire axe that Manning leaned against the wall. "Arlen!" Manning thinks of something. "Wait there!" he says to Lucy, still on the cell phone. "If we could shut down the computers here at the planetarium, we might hobble the whole system, right?" "Very likely," she answers. "Give it a shot, and I'll monitor the results on the journal's mainframe." Manning turns to Farber. "Arlen, help me! Help them!" He points to the television screen. "And grab that axe. Chop through the main bundle of cables there, on the floor." Farber hesitates. Manning tells him, "The axe handle is wooden. You'll be fine. Please, Arlen, now." Farber bites his lips, nods, and grabs the axe, positioning himself with a wide stance alongside the bundle of cables. He raises the axe over his head, jangling the keys and whistle that still hang from his neck. He flexes the muscles of both arms, then swings, hacking solidly into the cables. A few sparks spit from the heavy plastic tube, but there's no danger. These cables apparently carry information, not raw power. Immediately, the computers in the room seem to belch, becoming much less active. They no longer churn in unison, but make random little noises, independent of each other. Farber breathes with pride and continues to chop at the cable bundle till it is completely severed. Lucy's voice says over the phone, "I don't know what you did, Mark, but all the telephone activity between here and there has ceased. Well done." And in fact, Manning notices on television that the sky show at the stadium appears to have powered down. With 2 minutes to spare, the triangle is pink now, no longer red, and it rotates slowly above the crowd, much less menacingly. Farber tosses aside his axe and struts toward the desk, preparing to reward himself with another drink. As he lifts the jug of Jack Daniels, his police whistle clangs against it. "Uh-oh," Lucy's voice sounds a note of warning over the phone. Something's happening. Even as she speaks, Manning notices that the laser spectacle appears to have powered up again. It's brighter, redder, moving faster, Lucy explains. When the journal's mainframe lost communication with the planetarium, it began establishing phone connections elsewhere. There's new intense digital activity between the journal and some other location that's not in Chicago. I think, yes, I see area codes. The journal's mainframe is now linked to Washington. Manning watches on television as a security force scurries about the president and begins leading him off the field. A camera near the stage shows him leaving. Faces in the crowd look confused, wondering about the abrupt departure. There's Neil, turning quizzically from Claire to Roxanne. Manning asks Lucy, "This whole system is linked by phone lines, right? Can you identify the trunk line between the journal and Washington? And then patch me into it. I want to hear what the transmission actually sounds like." Lucy stammers over the phone. "I think so, Mark." "Sure, here we go. You'll lose my voice now." Manning presses the phone close to his ear and listens to the secret digital channel of computers plotting a massacre. The bleeps and tones shoot back and forth, with dizzying speed, exchanging technical commands that are executed with instantaneous precision. Manning checks the time. 11 minutes past 9. There's less than 1 minute remaining at the stadium. Cameras follow the laser display. Fully energized, it spins cyclonically above the top bleachers, roiling with internal heat. And then it tips, darting with its points to slice cleanly through two more of the flagpoles. One of them falls outside the stadium, but the other drops within, trailing a burning American flag. The white-hot steel mass slides down one of the long aisles, narrowly missing row after row of horrified onlookers. Farber stands there fidgeting with his drink, trying to gulp from it, but unable to swallow. Manning watches the laser triangle condense itself further as it begins its descent to the field. He hears the electronic scenario of doom beeping in his ear. He sees Farber. Then inspiration strikes. Manning shouts, "Give me that!" Utterly dismayed, Farber tenders to Manning his cocktail. "No!" Manning reaches toward Farber's chest, grabs the neck chain, and yanks it, sending keys clattering to the floor. But in Manning's hand remains the big chrome police whistle. He jabs the whistle into his mouth, positions the phone in front of it, inhales so deep that his gut churns, then he blows, stunned by the pitch and the decibels. Farber claps his hands to his ears, dropping his jelly jar to the desk, where it crashes, sloshing Jack and Diet Right squarely into Manning's lap. But Manning doesn't care. He's listening to the phone again, and when the ringing in his own ears is cleared, he hears absolutely nothing. Seconds before, 12 minutes past 9, the television picture from the stadiums are following the descent of the laser spectacle toward the field, when without warning it suddenly blinks out. The crowd is hushed as a few charred birds drop to the ground, and then 100,000 spectators burst into applause, roaring their approval of the big finish. Seconds before 12 minutes past 9, something goes wrong. Again with the laser projector atop the Journal building. 2 minutes ago, Nathan Kane was distraught to realize that the unit was losing power. Perhaps the computer link with the planetarium had been severed. He was confident there was still sufficient time for the system to establish connection with its backup link in Washington, but he figured he'd better take action just in case things got out of control, so he managed with difficulty to hoist himself onto the weapon-seating fixture, taking hold of two armatures with which he might aim the device if the automatic control should fail. It turned out that this precaution was unnecessary. The backup link functioned flawlessly, and within moments, the laser gun was powered up again, putting on quite a show at the stadium because the gun was now making jerky movements as part of its programmed routine. Kane decided to remain in the tractor seat. It might be dangerous to dismount. Besides, he discovered he had a much better view of the stadium from the seat up here, and he looked forward to witnessing the final moment of the spectacle, when his daring plan would be fulfilled. With that moment at hand, Kane congratulated himself for masterminding a scheme that was, at the same time, both profoundly complex and devilishly simple. It was complex because of the conspiracy, the timing, and the computer technology behind it. The scheme was simple, though, in its brutally direct approach to curing a social ill, and also in the rudimentary telephone technology used in patching together an invisible but powerful control system. Telephones, he gloated. Just think, everyday household phone lines were made to serve as an indispensable component in a high-tech project that would within moments change the destiny of a nation. But now, with only seconds remaining, something goes wrong again. Kane will never know it, but his foolproof, baby-simple telephone links have just been bested by a police whistle. A screech in the phone lines has just made mush of the network's electronics, bouncing a jumble of conflicting commands to Washington, and then back to the top of the Journal building. The light show at the stadium is over, but the fireworks have only begun, and Nathan Kane's laser cannon capacitors pop, relays fizzle, and circuit boards melt, as the control systems of the device are shorted by a voltage surge that could blow fuses from Waukegan to Peoria. Nathan Kane's body is equipped with no such fuse, of course. so the metal tractor seat quite literally fries his sorry ass. For decades, Nathan Kane has been revered as Chicago's living icon of journalism. In death, he is now but hissing meat. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.